You're 25, but I'm 5.
Okay.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me today. And I loved the interview, and I loved getting to kind of be a fly on the wall in that conversation that Denise and Nikki just had, because it was so heartfelt. And that Denise, I think, said something during it, but it was a very present conversation. They were talking to each other, and they were aware that you were here, and threw something your way here and there, but it was their conversation. They were in this moment relating to each other. And the power of really doing that, and the rarity of really doing that anymore, is really kind of sad about the world that we live in. But it's also like a superpower that you have if you can adopt that, to live into real presence and real curiosity and real interest about that person across the table from you. And that's what I loved about that conversation, is there was a warmth, there was a mutual admiration, there was a connectedness in that moment that we got to see as the sort of flies on the wall, that I think we can adopt ourselves, and we're sort of all on that journey at various points of doing that well. And if you think about that conversation, there were so many dimensions of Nikki's past, Nikki's values, Nikki's present, her aspirations, and her future that came out of not a very long conversation, right? So you learned that her dad was a coal miner. You learned that her dad worked super hard in that sort of day job or night job, as it were, and then was building this network marketing dream on top of that. And that's important because those are some important facts that might be relevant in some way. But it was also more important, and you obviously saw that come out much more at the end, but you saw it early. If you were paying attention, her energy and the way she came across changed dramatically when she started talking about her dad. And that's maybe, if you can take one thing from what the coffee shop interview is about, it's about watching for those moments where something kind of, that spark hits, and they access something from their past, or access something about somebody else or about themselves, and you realize that that's the thing that they value the most about other people, that they value the most about themselves. Like, so values are key in the coffee shop interview, because values are key in a relationship. Like, we want to connect at that level of values, and that's going to allow us to serve people, and that's going to allow us to figure out if they want to be a part of what we're doing, and if they're a good fit to be a part of what we're doing. And then when it's time to connect those dots with them down the line, because we've had these conversations, speaking into those values is what's going to make it a really easy, natural, organic conversation that served them, and that they're leaning into that conversation because of the way that you have structured everything about it. And if you're not tuned into those values, or if you haven't taken the time to discover them, or you haven't taken the time to remember them, even though they made them plain in the conversation throughout, every step of the way, you're gonna miss, and you're gonna do something that totally screws the pooch, and that says something. You're gonna come at it about money, and money doesn't matter to them. You're gonna come at it about health freedom, and they're gonna say, I'm 25 years old and I feel great. Like, I'm not worried about my health. And yeah, I understand. Like, I understand up here that I need to take care of my health for my future, but like, that's not waking me up at night, and that's not going to compel me to take action. So you've got to understand what that person's drivers are first and foremost. But it's also really the number of facts that you can collect about somebody in your mind in that conversation while remaining present, but getting them out of your head into contact mapping, into your notes in the app. You won't believe how often it happens for me that something that I thought was kind of dumb that they told me in the moment, or like I was like, why are you telling me about this, I don't know, new, soft drink that you love or something, but I'll like write down that thing, and somehow that will manage to come back up in conversation with them. Or like miraculously, some other person will be telling me about this, like it'll like come up again in 2 weeks with some other random stranger, and like there will be this connection point. But if I hadn't taken the time to collect that little snippet of information and get it out of my head into somewhere where I could get back to it, that second moment would totally blow past me, or worse, which is what usually happens to me if I haven't actually done what I'm supposed to do, is I'll go, somebody told me that, and you're like scratching your head and you're trying to put the dots back together, and it's like that moment when you walk into the kitchen and you can't figure out why you're there. We all hate that moment, right? So remembering more and caring enough to write it down are skills that will transform your network marketing business, but they will transform your life, because they will make you into that person that is everyone's best friend, like Nikki is everyone's best friend. And I have seen that in plain sight, that you genuinely care about people. You are genuinely in their life. And while I'm sure they know plenty about you too, they feel so known by you and that you're invested in who they are and in their life. And what could be more attractive to have in a friendship than to have somebody that I just know they really care about me, and that I know that if I'm going through something, that they know enough about me that I don't have to explain it all from the beginning, and that I know they care. If you really stop and think about the number of people besides your spouse and immediate family that are on that list of caring about you that way, it's for almost all of us, that's not a long list. And that's again an incredible gift and an incredible opportunity that it just doesn't, it takes so much less than you think, besides, and excuse the swear word, but just giving a damn about people. Like if you just care and then do a little bit of work, and when I say a little bit of work, like I'm talking about 2 minutes of work. So I get, I'm Denise, and I walk out of that conversation and I pull out my phone and I go, I just had coffee with Nikki. We had a great conversation. She told me about her dad, who was a coal miner. He's a master archer. He just won this amazing tournament where he shot 2 perfect scores in one day. Her daughter is named Adrian. They call her Pickle. Her husband's name is Joel. Joel is working nights right now to help everything support the family. And I just brain dump out of my head, and in 2 minutes, everything that I needed to remember to that conversation, I did almost all of it in less than 30 seconds right there. And you're just speaking it into your phone, and that will come back around to you in so many ways, because especially again as network marketers, the bigger we're playing, the more people that we're doing this with, and the harder that it becomes, despite our big hearts and our best efforts, the harder it's going to become to keep that level of detail straight across a lot of people. Because if you're meeting new people all the time, think about like at a longevity convention, if you've ever been to one of those, or any kind of big event like that where you're networking and you meet 10 people in an hour. If you even by the time you get home from that event, let alone the next day, like everything's kind of run together, right? You guys have got that experience?
Yeah.
And it's like, we cared, we were really present, we were present in that moment, we were enjoying the conversation, but it's like information overload for our brain. And so if we don't get it out of our brain fast enough, it runs together and then it slowly disappears. So caring enough to take that 2 minutes or less to distill an hour's conversation into some notes that you're going to be able to refer back to is incredible. And so then what's going to happen is all of those pieces of information are going to be there for you to refer back to, and that's going to be helpful because they'll come back up and you'll be able to show you care by not necessarily like verbatim playing back the interview to the person that you talked to, but you're going to be able to signal in the conversation that you remembered. You're going to ask about Pickle by name instead of asking about her daughter. You're going to ask about archery and not screw it up and say axe throwing or something. You're going to be specific in your questions, and you're going to demonstrate the recall that you have from that conversation, and that's going to mean a lot to somebody. But where it really gets special, I think, is the value. So there was one other part of that conversation that, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but this was my observation of it. So when Denise was asking Nikki about the future, 2 things happened. One is you saw there was a little bit of there was something there that if you know Nikki, then maybe you can kind of follow what that was about. But if you didn't know Nikki, maybe you could ask some more questions about that, which was that she was a little bit, she went, oh, that's an interesting question. Normally we set goals at the beginning of every year, and we didn't set goals at the beginning of this year. And I was laying in bed last night thinking about that. So that was a big thing, right? And we don't need to go into all of it, but like they've had a crazy few months. And if you knew Nikki, or if you were just getting to know Nikki, that would be a great place for you to kind of probe a little bit deeper and kind of go, that's interesting. What's kind of been going on there, and to be able to ask some questions around that. But then she went into what's important to us is time freedom. And to access time freedom, we have to have financial freedom. And so those were two big statements, right? So financial freedom is a means to an end, not an end in itself. But I didn't actually sense I didn't sense a fire in your eyes when you said time freedom. And so then you talked for another second, and then you said, and really what it's about is finding a way to contribute to others. And that's when I saw you rise sort of again, and like it crystallized in your mind that was what it was really about. And so when it's time to come back and talk to Nikki and say, I might have an idea for you, and how do we co-create a future together? Really what it is how do I create a vision alongside you and help you to create a vision, or tap into the vision you already have about finding a contribution to somebody else? Because that's what feeds your heart. Is that true? Yeah. And so it's so easy when we're doing this, you look at if you're on Facebook and you're seeing network marketers in this company to some degree, but certainly in other companies, people are leading with all kinds of stuff. And money is not that compelling to 95% of the population. And yet a huge percentage of the population is out there trying to kind of act, pose next to the Lamborghini that clearly they don't own. And all of a sudden, scroll, like, give me a break. So number one, just knowing that like that's dumb, which I think I'm preaching to the choir in this room. But to really get specific into, like, you told me that, like, you gave me the key to your heart, or you gave Denise the key to your heart in that moment. And now it's my job as the person who listened to that to use that power for good, because like you can easily, if you get good at this, you can really easily manipulate people with these principles, because people will share so much of their heart because they're just so, we all long so much to be listened to, heard, loved, and affirmed for who we are and our values. And if you do that well, I mean, you can take people almost anywhere. And so what's important is that we do that. That's why that starting point of you're searching for what's in it for them versus what's in it for you. You have to truly see how and believe that you're connecting them to something that's going to give them more leverage to live the life that they dream of, and that you're going to help them get there. And when you can do that, and we have the vehicle to do that, certainly with this profession, with this company, with the products that this company offers, and the breadth of them and the quality across the board that we have, there's a very, very high proportion of the population that you can find what dimension of what we do serves exactly what they're trying to get out of their life. But that connection point is essential. And so I've now captured the information. I have now put that into my note, and I've set my intention of, as soon as I finish that note, it's going to say, when are you going to follow up with Nikki, and what are you going to follow up about? And so I need to decide based on where we are in our conversation, where we are in the development of that relationship, and to Denise's point, where that person's needs are in terms of, like, if this person is desperate and they need what you have like tomorrow, then you've got to like put it into high gear to develop that relationship to the point where it's ready, because you always have to do that first. But you need to know what's the appropriate level of urgency to carry that relationship forward, so that you, again, with the goal of serving that person. So there's times where somebody walks through this door of the training center, for example, and like they don't have 2 weeks for me to follow up with them in 2 weeks. Like, it's like, all right, you go home, I gave you this book, and like, you're going to come back here tomorrow at 9 and we're going to go through this thing. There's times where that's the giving, serving thing to do. And there's times when it's not like that, and that if you told them to do that, they would think you were really weird. And so you gotta tune your antenna of being able to sense the signals that people are giving back to you in a relationship. But as you carry yourself in this way, and you get curious, and you dig into people's values, and you affirm them for who they are and for the values that they have, they're gonna lean in more as a result of that, right? Because you're gonna get a higher hit rate of people that are kind of vibrating with you because of the way that you treat them than you have been in the past. So, which feels great, right? It's such a cool, to be able to just be great at making friends and having them want to be your friend is a wonderful feeling and a wonderful gift to have. And you can develop that gift through doing these things. But I'm now going to set that, and depending on the timeline and depending on that conversation, if it's more of a situation of it's kind of going to require some warming up, every one of those touch points that came from that conversation of archery, of Amway, coal miner dad, loves, very family oriented and very caring about that, that's those values, and that value of humility, those are the things that matter. Those are all going to guide you in what are the touch points that you create. So follow-ups are really, almost banish the word follow-up from your mind and start thinking of it as touch points, because what you're trying to do is find meaningful ways to continue to stay in touch with that person in a way that's about giving value to them. And the more of these items, the more information that you can collect and the better understanding you can have for that person, the easier and the more plentiful those touch points are going to pop into your mind, where you're going to legitimately be able to say, Nikki, I was thinking about you because I ran across X, Y, or Z today, and I thought you might like it. Would you like to come along to this event? Would you, I sent you this article because I thought you'd love it. Whatever it is, and oh, by the way, how's it going? And so instead of, hey, we talked a while ago, I kind of didn't mention this thing, but you might notice I'm in business, what's up? And they're like, kind of, why are you calling me? Each one of those creates this natural point, jump off point for just a chit chat. And you're going to see how that relationship progresses from there. So that becomes the way to take a cold conversation to a warm conversation. And that's really what it's all about. So you're using that initial interview, you're continuing to interview the person at each one of those touch points and continuing to add more and more to that log of information in this sort of running history that you have of conversations with each person. But each one of those things is driving towards a deeper friendship and a deeper relationship, and to qualifying whether they're gonna be ready for a true, specific exposure to your business or not. And sometimes that's going to happen really fast, and don't slow it down, right? Go straight to, are you open, or whatever, however you want to crack open that conversation and go straight into, all of the principles that we've seen in this business. Or if they're not ready, then don't push it, right? It doesn't serve you or them. And so you're getting in the business of using the coffee shop interview to make that determination and move it as fast or slow as appropriate. And so that's really the kind of the whole name of the game. And thank you, Nikki and Denise, for giving us just a really beautiful example of how even a short conversation can be so meaningful and what you can do with it. So thank you guys so much.